Good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Politics. I am your host, Michael Gordon. This is a very special program brought to you by the People's Progressive Party Civic. Tonight we will be discussing a number of issues, important issues within the body politic, issues naturally resolvable for want of a better phrase, but laced with political innuendos and political agendas. Uh, with me to discuss these and other programs tonight is former Minister of Health, and very importantly and very instructive to tonight's program and tonight's subjects of discussion. He also served as Minister of Agriculture. I introduce to you Dr. Leslie Ramsammy. Doc, I want to welcome you to tonight's program.
Thank you very much, and hello, everybody.
All right. I'd like to welcome those of you listening to this program on Freedom Radio and also those of you viewing this on the People's Progressive Party Facebook page, whether across the length and breadth of Guyana or outside of our borders in the diaspora. Welcome to tonight's program. I also look forward to some of your feedback as I follow some of your questions and comments on Facebook. Getting right into the discussions for tonight, Doc. The Tri-Star issue and the removal of mangroves and the stated intention by Tri-Star to replace those with structured revetment, which is always a better option. Mangroves, as you know it, Doc, is a cheaper, natural way to protect our sea defense and our river banks. It is always better. The money is not necessarily always there, but it's always better to have physical infrastructure to protect from the ravages of the sea and the rivers. I would recall during your tenure as Minister of Agriculture, while the mangrove restoration project had already begun before your tenure, I can recall that it was significantly intensified under you as Minister of Agriculture. And one of this is it formed part of the low carbon development strategy, if my memory serves me right, under the direction and the stewardship of former President Barjagdio, Dr. Barjagdio. Now it has become a political football. Uh, Mangroves being removed with an environmental plan to ensure that there is an alternative to prevent against overtopping, flooding, and the non-protection of our sea defenses has always existed in Guyana. With an opposition with very little to say and very little meaningful things to say, we've seen now the leader of the opposition write to 50 international organizations, big deal, in relation to the removal of these mangroves. And I hope, Doc, I know I've said a lot and you're itching to address this issue, but I hope many of those 50 organizations to which the opposition leader wrote in protest to the removal of these mangroves, I'm hoping many of them would respond in a manner that educates the leader of the opposition on some of the things that I said in my preamble. Dr. Ramsammy?
Thank you, Michael, and I'm glad you started out with this. Let me just say, as an individual, as a Guyanese, I'm an environmentalist, and I'm unashamedly an environmentalist. Let me just say this: that for me, removing a single mangrove tree without a good reason is a terrible, terrible crime. Having said that, we must remember this, that mangrove is not just important to me. The People's Progressive Party has been in the forefront of the mangrove restoration program in Guyana. Not just the People's Progressive Party Civic, but as you said in your introduction, the champion of the mangrove restoration program was Barjagdeo. Barjagdeo ensured that through several ministers, it was under Minister Javier as Minister of Works that that program started. And then when it wasn't moving fast enough, Barjagdeo lost his patience and moved the program into the Ministry of Agriculture when Robert Prasad was Minister of Agriculture. And then I took over from there. So the priority for the mangrove restoration was sea defense. Let me repeat that. The priority for the mangrove restoration program was sea defense. And mangrove became the priority sea defense structure because, as you said in your introduction, it was the cheaper alternative. It was cheaper than permanent structures like concrete walls. And, and therefore, if you have the opportunity to have these other structures, then the significance of mangrove is reduced in terms of addressing the priority of sea defense. What we have today is an opportunity for an economic development, a shoreline economic development that will bring jobs to our people, that will generate income for our country, that will increase the economic viability of our country. And it is not being taken advantage of without an alternative sea defense. As Minister Edgell, probably not very elegantly presented, but the fact is the fact. And that is that a sea defense is not being weakened by what is happening on the West Demerara. What is happening there is the mangrove sea defense is being replaced by a stronger sea defense structure that will permit us to be safe from the sea, that will prevent erosion, but also at the same time provide an economic opportunity for our people. And that's the bottom line. Now, when we started the mangrove restoration program, and the priority was sea defense, we saw other advantages, such as the environmental footprint, the carbon footprint in that. Now, one could argue, as some of the environmentalists have argued, that the issue is not about an alternative sea defense, that the issue is the carbon footprint. But that also can be replaced in this case because we can, in other areas, there are still many areas of our shoreline that is unprotected that we can expand the mangrove program. And therefore, we have several advantages to this project in that it allows us to have more jobs for our people without losing our protection from the sea and without losing our carbon footprint. And so it seems like a sensible choice that we have made. Now, if we had just knocked down the sea defense and we were not putting in an alternative, and there was no good reason for knocking it down, then that would have been criminal. But in this case, good sense has to prevail in that we see an opportunity for economic development and we have seized that opportunity whilst at the same time making sure that the advantages that a mangrove restoration project provides us are retained. And so this is the bottom line for the Guyanese people. We have lost nothing in this case, um, and we have gained. So I think that's the perspective that people need to bear in mind.
Note well what you've said, Doc. I'd like to also take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Ricardo Abraham Edwards, who says he's looking at this program from the Kanuku mountaintop. Very interesting. Of course, I usually acknowledge those listening to and watching this program across the length and breadth of Guyana. So, Mr. Abraham and family, I welcome you to this program. Doc, this also essentially, whilst you outlined the history, the intention, and the gist behind the value of mangroves, mangrove restoration, one must lament the fact that this issue, this solitary issue involving TriStar, has been made to, well, has been taken out of context and has now become what one would refer to as a political football. Uh, Without clearly understanding the science and the gist behind issues such as these, one wonders the the level of thinking or the thought process that goes into many initiatives and utterances of the political opposition.
I heard Mr. Harmon, and I know that he has written to 50 international organizations, as you stated before. And I have one question for Mr. Harmon and for the APNU AFC opposition. In the 5 years you were in government, how many mangrove plants did you have done in Guyana? When they gave away land on the Barbies seashore by Bohemia and so on, remember those lands that were given out to their comrades in the vicinity of where um, a possible oil refinery may land or a possible deep water harbor would be established,
And where mangroves currently are.
and where mangroves are presently protecting the seashore. Didn't they think that mangrove was important and therefore that land should be preserved? When it's handed over to themselves so that they could have some project or the other for their own personal gain, mangrove was not important. And in 5 years, the mangrove restored areas in Guyana did not increase by one tree, much less by zero point 0.1 acre. It wasn't important then. So it's clearly a politicized issue. And you know what? Their supporters should be upset because jobs being created increase revenue into the consolidated fund will benefit all Guyanese, not just those who support the PPP. Now, I don't know the people who are engaged with TriStar, but regardless of who it is, it's creating jobs for people, many of whom would have voted for APNU AFC. And so all we see here is clearly a politicization of this issue. So that's what I want Mr. Harmon to answer to the people. Mr. Abrams, you and your family in the Kanuku Mountains, I want to say hello. But those are the questions that ordinary citizens want to ask, because one would say that, well, what would people like Mr. Abrams in the Kanuku Mountains, or people in Borbees, or people in Essequibo, um, how would they benefit from a project like TriStar in the West Demerara? Because when the country earns more money, we can spend more on education, we can spend more on health, we can spend more on housing and sanitation, and we can spend more on the environment, making sure that Guyana retains its position on the global stage as an environmentally responsive, an environmentally responsible, and a country that produce champions of the earth like Barjadil. So clearly, Mr. Harmon is just fishing for something that will have traction. The, the bogus claim of the PPP being installed hasn't gotten traction. Their allegations of corruption isn't having any traction. Their allegation of discrimination, racial discrimination, is not gaining traction. And so they are fishing. And this one will not gain traction either, because as the Guyanese people learn the facts, Mr. Harmon is left without an issue still. It's been, some 9, 10 months since President Irfan Ali took office, since the PPP has been in office, and thus far, progress has taken place, and the opposition has not had a single issue on which they could gain traction, even among their own supporters. And so this is the problem. Every day they wake up, they are fishing for something. It's sheer hypocrisy that one would politicize a matter that will benefit all of Guyana. But the Minister of Works, um, the Honorable One Edgehill, has made clear that the mangrove protection will be replaced by protection by more sturdier structure. And the government has made clear that we are going to continue to expand the mangrove restoration program. In fact, this year, in this year's budget, there is more money for mangrove restoration than has been in the budget for the previous 5 years. So on every angle that you look at, you see that all Mr. Harmon and his opposition colleagues are doing is politicizing this matter. Now, I'm not diminishing the concern expressed by some people. There are genuine environmentalist persons who have raised concern once the mangrove was removed. But I think once the assurance is provided that it's not just being removed, that they are being replaced by sturdier structure to maintain our sea defense, and that the mangrove restoration project is being accelerated, then I think people understand that, they are making a mountain out of a molehill. And so these are the facts.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Ramsamy, especially from the standpoint that what obtained between 2015 and 2020, as it relates to a national strategy, as it relates to combating climate change, global warming, which was the Green State Development Strategy, as compared to a more comprehensive and holistic approach built into the low carbon development strategy, which also which also contains an economic component which brought financial benefit to the people of this country, and one wonders on which one wonders from which moral standpoint the leader of the opposition speak, on what moral authority does he speak when you make the comparisons between the whatever green strategy that existed over the period of 2015 to 2020 as compared to the more comprehensive low carbon development strategy, which uh, I dare say many countries around the world used as a model as it relates to how countries with significant forest cover can benefit financially from developed countries. It boggles the mind to understand from which standpoint the leader of the opposition comes. And I believe these baseless rhetoric, Dr. Ramsamy, the baseless rhetoric, the ill thought out and ill conceived arguments, and the fishing expedition to which you referred. I believe it is for this very reason there is a very vibrant movement in Sophia at Congress Place to have the current leadership of the People's National Congress removed. It is, in my own view, the frustration of the rank and file of the PNC, the frustrations of the core membership of the party with the current leadership of the People's National Congress. And make no mistake, I'm not going to refer to an APNU or an AFC. I see only a People's National Congress. And I believe these asinine positions, ill thought out and ill conceived positions, perhaps is what has lent to the frustration to many in leadership, but more so to the rank and file and membership of the party. Thus, the call for a replacement in leadership. There is no vision, there is no forward thinking, and there is no possibly there's no intelligent thought to anything nationally or an intelligent approach to how the party embraces its role as the major opposition party in Guyana. Doc?
In politics, and you have in every country major political parties that have genuine differences. So if you talk about an issue, so let's go back to the national service, that you can debate the pros and cons of national service. There are genuine disagreements. What we have now is there is no sound argument made against any policy directive that the present government presents. There is no concrete demonstration that the PNC has a better way to deliver a service. And the positions they are taking is creating confusion, one, but two, embarrassment for the rank and file members of the PNC. Many of the older um, members of the PNC are so embarrassed that they're openly asking the question, where is a Mr. Winston Murray? Where is a a Mr. Dunstan Barrow, where the likes of a Carl Greenwich and a Debbie Barker, persons who would present logical arguments against a policy that the PPP may have or against actions that the PPP might take. Today, you refer to it as asinine. It is senseless. It is by no accident, Michael, and to our comrades listening, that the diaspora group in the US has written an open letter to Mr. Granger and to the present executive, because not only is the present PNC the worst opposition Guyana has ever had, and now earning the reputation as the worst opposition in the Caribbean, but they are creating a level of embarrassment that people are leaving the party. There are people who served in the cabinet of the PNC in the 80s and so on. And they did many bad things then. But even these people cannot take what is happening right now. See, when you see, Mr. Greenwich, for example, did not join the PPP. Mr. Greenwich has taken a position that Guyana is more important to him than the PNC. And he wished that he could stay with the PNC. I'm just speaking of one person because he made a public decision. But Mr. Greenwich is not the only staunch PNC member who is disavowing the present PNC. And so you will see many more people coming up and throwing their hat in the ring, wanting to become the leader of the PNC. Because there isn't just total dissatisfaction and frustration with Mr. Granger, there is total frustration with the present crop that is leading the PNC. And people might say that the PPP is happy to see what is happening, that the senior members of the PPP are laughing because they would like to see the PNC disappear. But a good government always wants a strong opposition. You know, there is a thing called we are as weak as our weakest link. Our country will benefit from a strong opposition, one that works with the government, but one that keeps active scrutiny, forensic scrutiny of the government. We
But
don't
Doc,
have that at this time.
but Doc, I'm going to be a little controversial here because you said there are many people who feel that the PPP wants to see the PNC disappear. But I don't have any confidence that the intelligent opposition and the intelligent positions to which you refer, I don't have any confidence if that will emanate out of Congress Place, number one. And I don't think the disappearance of the PNC will take away quality from the national debate on any issue. So I'm going to be a little controversial here from the standpoint that they, quite frankly, don't make any sense anyway. So whether or not they disappear, it
And that is
doesn't.
creating a room for civil society And so
Absolutely.
what you find right now, that the kind of logical type of debate is coming from civil society and among ourselves within the PPP, because the PNC has lost its way. But the reason I said what I said is that Parliament is part of government. And unfortunately, Mr. Harmon and his crew occupy those seats in Parliament. Take, for example, this. We have a constitutional committee in Parliament, a standing committee. We, and among the things that this committee is talking about for the next few years is constitutional reform that address one of our flaws, and that is an electoral system and an electoral process that is foolproof, that cannot be manipulated as easily as it was between 2018 and 2020. This is where we need a strong opposition to participate in the process, and they're not doing that. So, what the people of Guyana is suffering from is that, see, they didn't just elect a party to be the government, they also elected a party to be the opposition in parliament. Take the Public Accounts Committee. Civil society cannot be holding government accountable. It is the opposition party. Look at the debates in parliament. You would think that it is something happening in the back dam.
But when you
They
look at it,
could not hold a single minister accountable.
but when you look at it, Dr. Ramsammy, even their nominee to chair the Public Accounts Committee has been significantly tainted from the standpoint of public accountability.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that person, Mr. Patterson, was a poster child for corruption between 2015 and 2020. The Demerara Harbor Bridge was not just a PPP allegation, Demerara Harbor Bridge feasibility study. The Public Procurement Commission proclaimed that there was inappropriate action. So, in in that circumstance, you would think a responsible political party, a responsible opposition, would put somebody there that can bring some moral suasion. How would Mr. Patterson hold any minister or any agency in government accountable? And so this is why I'm saying that you need a strong opposition. You also need a strong civil society. You need a strong private sector commission. And this private sector commission, unlike those in many, many years ago, in the last 10 years or so, we have a commission that feels emboldened, that speak out on matter. They've spoken out against the PPP government before 2015. They spoke out against the PNC or APNUAC government, and they have raised issues in this last 10 months or so. So it is good to have a strong civil society voice, but a strong civil society voice is not enough for good governance in any country. You need a strong opposition. The PPP proved the point because one of the best opposition anywhere in the world, if we look back in the last 50 years, was the Barjagdeo led PPP opposition. We held them accountable every single day in Parliament, so much so that they were scared to hold sessions of Parliament. And now, here's the PPP wanting them to provide strong opposition, welcoming the scrutiny, welcoming the debate, and we have none from them. That wouldn't deter the PPP from doing its job. We will do the best we can. And you know where the biggest and most robust debate on policy is occurring? Two places. One, the cabinet, and two, the EXCO meeting at Freedom House. That's where it's happening. It is holding each other accountable, right? And that is also a very a good thing that is happening. But none of that could replace the vitality, the vigor, the energy of a good opposition. And when you
On,
have a good opposition, it drives the government to do better and better and better. And so when you were talking about the 20,000 scholarship, they could come and have a logical debate with us. Why not 30,000? Um, when you talk about a housing program, why only 10,000 house lot plan for 2021? Why not more? Why um, more in one region than the next? Region 6 might want to know why is it that we are spending $3 billion on housing in Region 3? There are good reasons, of course, but we need an opposition
you need good questions.
to, to question us about this. They should listen to this program because they will have issues, genuine issues to talk about.
Dr.
When the
Ramsammy,
Minister of Health sits with me and other senior people in the ministry, he has more scrutiny than he gets in Parliament and from this opposition. A shadow Minister of Health has not stood out once in 10 months to question any action of government.
I
Have
was
you
about to,
seen a shadow minister?
I was about to say scrutiny of substance.
Right, right. But have, in the case of health, it's not just substance. They have not attempted once to hold the minister to scrutiny. What about where's the shadow housing minister? Where's the shadow agriculture minister? We can go on and on. And if you are a genuine supporter of the PNC, you should not only be worried, you should be absolutely angry at this point because you elected them to represent you either in government or in opposition, and they are not doing so. They are insulting their supporters by
Doc,
their action right now.
You referenced the strength of the opposition, the People's Progressive Party in opposition. I could not but recognize the efforts made by the man who has now become president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Dr. Irfan Ali, in his role he played in holding the David Granger administration accountable, in his role as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee in the National Assembly. And I think it just adds value to the point you made as it relates to the quality of an opposition lends to better performance of a government. But I want to revisit a subject we touched on earlier, and I want to form a direct correlation between that and something I want to bring to the fore next. And this dealt with the internal politics of the People's National Congress. Of course, many PNC apologists are accusing PPP surrogates of interference and over commentary on the political goings on within the PNC. However, one has to, and in fact, some of the apologists are saying so many people are now contesting the leadership of the party, not because they're frustrated with the current leadership, but because the party embraces the whole notion of democracy. And I say, I can't say what I want to say, but nonsense. I'm going to just say nonsense. Notwithstanding the fact, you have, you're championing the notion of democracy, Dr. Ramsammy. But yet your leader, the immediate past president, seems not very inclined for toward judicial review at the highest levels. Now he's lamenting the role the CCJ makes in its presiding over electoral cases relating to Guyana. Doesn't the former president of this country, someone that held an office as high as president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, understand the the treaty through which Guyana signed on to the Caribbean Court of Justice? How do you form the distinction between having the CCJ rule on particular matters as against the Court of Appeal in Guyana? I just don't understand this gentleman when he speaks at times.
Okay, and I will go directly to that question um, on democracy and on scrutiny. The original idea that you brought up and comment about other people making comment into the business of the PNC. Remember, this is a party that carry around its neck like an albatross the title of electoral rigors. Throughout its history, it has rigged elections. We have earned a right to scrutinize them in their behavior on democracy and on elections. They are saying that the number of people who are coming out expressing interest to run for leadership demonstrate the democratic credentials of that party. But what is clear right now is that the leader you spoke about, Mr. Granger, is refusing to hold the party's Congress. What kind of democratic credentials are you talking about when you do not want to give the rank and file members of your party the opportunity to decide their future as a
Doc,
party?
Doc, I want to put it another way. How do you subscribe to the whole notion of democracy when you attempt to deny the highest decision-making forum in your party an opportunity to make decisions, just as much
Exactly.
as you disrespected the Constitution of Guyana while you were president? I want to put that in the
And
reverse.
these things are connected. Their disregard of the constitution of the country is not a new thing, it's in their DNA. Because when it suits them, they disregard the constitution of their own political party. Their constitution calls for a Congress to be held. It is not just a demand by some people, it is the law of their political party that is being breached and violated right now. And so, for people who could so easily dismiss their own constitution, what do you think they will do with the national constitution? And the only political party in this country that has consistently violated the national constitution, not just the recent form of the PNC, but throughout its history, has been the PNC. And having said that, it is our constitution that mandate appeals to the Caribbean Court of Justice. When this country decided that we do need a higher court in terms of scrutinizing judicial decisions in our country, because it was Burnham and the PNC that removed the Privy Council, an alternative appeals court for most of the Caribbean countries. They did not replace it with anything. I
Deliberately.
was a member of parliament when the CCJ legislation came and was unanimously voted for. The PNC agreed to incorporate that into our constitution. I was a member of the oversight committee. Myself, Dr. Luncheon, and Mr. Nagamutu represented the PPP on that oversight committee. And when we made the CCJ our highest court, it was unanimously agreed by both the government and the opposition. Mr. Granger's party agreed for us to go. But it was Mr. Granger who just last year referred to CARICOM as the most legitimate interlocutor into elections matter in our country. And now you are saying the CCJ should have no business? When the CCJ ruled against a Barjad the third term, the CCJ was
Was
a
the best thing in
legitimate
tongue.
court, right? And now, because you feel, see, they're going on their record, they feel that they could manipulate the court. And I'm not saying that, not saying anything bad about any one of our judges. I'm just simply saying that the PNC feel they have a legitimate right to manipulate our courts.
Of appeal,
And that is
especially.
a fact. And they think that if they could only keep the CCJ out of our election matter, that they have enough leeway to mess with our court system. I'm being frank here because they did succeed in getting our court, our appeals court, to agree with them that 33 is not more than 32, and that 34 plus 32 is still 65. And because they were able to manipulate the court system that way, they believe that if they could just keep the CCJ out, they may have a chance with our court system. So, what kind of democracy are they talking about? When you want to totally violate our constitution once again. And so these are the facts. These are the hard, cold facts that people have to deal with. And when you see people that are traditionally fiercely anti PPP taking a step back and saying, wait a minute, maybe the PPP was right all along. So this is what they are doing. When Mr. Granger speak about CCJ not being part of our electoral system, all he succeeded in doing is losing some more persons, fair-minded people, people who want logical, substantial type of opposition. That's what Mr. Granger is doing. Every
Doc,
single day that he opens his mouth, he loses one more or many more people who want to support the PNC.
Doc, I want to make a point, and this relates directly to Mr. Granger, and I have to commend him in this regard. One remembers in 2015, at a press conference, my colleague, as a fellow journalist, Mr. Peter Richards, from Trinidad and Tobago, I believe,
Yes.
asked the question in 2015 about the delay in the release of the elections results. And then opposition leader David Granger said that it is a dangerous thing in any democracy for 2 days after polling to pass and not have a declaration of the winner. Such incidents could lead to social unrest. This is 2015. Mr. Granger was at the time condemning the Guyana Elections Commission for not having released the results of the elections 48 hours after polling day. Um, this is the same gentleman in 2020 who held this country hostage for 5 months after polling day, and he was okay with that. And it is on that note, Dr. Ramsammy, that I have to commend Mr. Granger. If he has not been consistent about anything else, Mr. Granger, former president of this country, David Granger, must be commended for his consistency, Doc, at being inconsistent. So I said that to make the point whether you take someone seriously who has never been consistent in their utterances, and you reference the point he made after the CCJ handed down their decision on the case regarding the third term of Barra Jagdeo. The CCJ was the best thing after sliced bread. Now the CCJ should not, after having lost an election, taking the most ridiculous arguments to the courts, having some good fortune at Guyana's Court of Appeal, and, and those silly arguments reaching to the Caribbean Courts of Justice, who essentially shut down your arguments, causing you to lose an election. Now the CCJ has become a problem. The CCJ, which is an organ of the Caribbean community, CARICOM, and CARICOM being referred to as the single most important interlocutor in Guyana's election stalemate. Where is the consistency? And Mr. Granger, I repeat for the sake of emphasis, should be commended for being consistent with his profound inconsistencies. And I say so unapologetically, Dr. Ramsammy.
Oh no, I think if you go back to 2011 and you take all of his speeches, you would see that he speaks conveniently. His position depends on what is happening on a particular day.
I just want to jump in here. One would recall the slashing of, after gaining a one-seat majority combined in the opposition, and the budgets of certain subvention agencies were slashed to $1. I would never
Right.
forget, at that time, I was in the employ of NCN, and our budget was slashed to $1. And Mr. Granger's comment about, at that time, the Government Information Agency, which later became the DPI, in his tenure as president. Mr. Grinch says what the reason for slashing the budget of DPI or GINA in those days was because GINA does not provide balanced coverage. How the hell do you do that in a government information agency?
Exactly. And if you compare DPI to GINA, you would see that if you the little bit um, of coverage that GINA provided for the opposition, because GINA covered the parliament in a way that was balanced. They covered parliament, so they covered both the government and the opposition speaker. The DPI often cut off a coverage. Did you notice how many times the internet only knew when the opposition was speaking in the last 5 years and it conveniently cut off? So Mr. Granger is taking position that is just comfortable for him.
Well, there's transparency for you.
Right. And you will recall that um, there were times in Mr. Granger's career where Caribbean leaders were supposed to be the leaders that we in Guyana look to for support for interventions in Guyana, not outside of the region. That Mr. Granger's position. Going back to the 70s and 80s when the Caribbean leaders um, did not intervene openly in in Guyana's politics, and up 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, up to March 2020, Mr. Granger still felt the Caribbean leaders had a legitimate right to participate in Guyana's politics. It was only after March 2nd that Mr. Granger decided that the Caribbean leaders are interfering in Guyana's affairs. So, this is what I meant by convenience. Um, so, when the Caribbean leaders would not support the attempted theft of an election, they were no longer welcome into Guyana's affairs. And Mr. Granger has that history. One day he stands here, another day he stands here, another day he stands up there. He has no consistency on any single matter in Guyana. Um, and so I think part of the reason, the frustration of his supporters, is that, listen, if you lose Mr. Rickford Burke, you ain't gonna lose. So you take the most ardent PNC supporters, and they have all left Mr. Granger. Mr. Granger is isolated um, in his um, home, and he has handpicked an opposition leader that is no longer representing the ordinary members of the PNC, much less the ordinary Guyanese citizen. Because the
Doc,
opposition leader, by the way, sits in parliament, and the opposition sit in parliament not only to represent those who voted for them, but to represent every citizen in this country. Once we take our seat in parliament, we represent every citizen. So the government doesn't govern for the people who voted for them, they govern for all of the people of this country. And the opposition is supposed to speak for everyone. All the PNC supporter want them to do now, boys and girls, if you can't speak for everybody, at least speak for us. And they are not doing that. And that
Doc,
is a problem in our country.
Doc, our time is gone. Unfortunately, there are so many more things I was hoping we could have discussed tonight. I hope I can have you back on pretty soon so we could continue this discussion. Some parting thoughts based on the discussions we've had so far tonight. I hope, as I said, that I could have you return perhaps tomorrow so we could continue these and other discussions.
Guyana has come a far way in 10 months. We have recovered a lot of lost ground, even in the midst of COVID 19. Guyana is becoming an economic giant in CARICOM. But it is not just because of oil, it's because of the social policies of a government that is empowering every citizen in every region of our country. It is because our government is not just restoring our traditional economy, but modernizing and expanding the traditional economy. Agriculture will be Guyana's foundation for economic development long after oil is no longer a major industry in our country. And agriculture is progressing by leaps and bounds in our country. But we recognize one thing, that the greatest asset of our country is the human capital. The 20,000 scholarship this year, our work at the University of Ghana, our work with housing and water and electricity. These are programs that is enabling, empowering our young people and our citizens across the board. Work we're doing with our pensioners, the cash grant for children in school, shows that as much as we are focused on economic development, we haven't forgotten what the PPP is best known for, and that is focusing on the social welfare needs of our people, our human capital, the greatest asset for our country. And that is why the PPP will always be a major political party in Guyana, and that is why the PPP is ready to take Guyana to a place that few of us could imagine. And not in 20 years, but in the next 5 years. So
Dr. Leslie Ramsammy, former Minister of Health, former Minister of Agriculture, and currently advisor to the Minister of Health. Thank you for being on this program. As I said, I hope I
thank
could
you.
have you on soon so we could continue these discussions.
Thank you all. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you all.
I'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for keeping us company. We trust that we would have enlightened you on many issues. I will be back with you tomorrow. It's on this very solemn note, I would like to give profound condolences to my colleague Edward Lane and his family. Edward lost his father this week, and on behalf of my family and I, and on behalf of the People's Progressive Party civic family, profound condolences to the Lane family. And Eddie, we hope you pull through this tough period of bereavement. Eddie won't be with us this week. I will be doing all of the programs this week. And we hope that you pull through enough so we can see you again soon. Stay strong, my brother. Thanks for joining us from across the length and breadth of Guyana and in the diaspora. You've been watching Let's Talk Politics. a special program brought to you by the People's Progressive Party. Good night.